Alright, so yesterday I went to my first Halloween party. I think everybody had the same idea about this, like the 28th, the Saturday before Halloween, is the day because it's a full moon. It was a full moon last night. So I think that might have been why everyone chose it. And also, isn't it like, it's a shame that, Halloween is so connected to October. So Halloween is the last day, and then it feels like it's immediately over. I wish that it could linger a bit, and it feels weird to have a Halloween party in November, but often that's like a better date because, Halloween might be in the week and then you're like, I'll just do it on that weekend, but it's November, so it doesn't feel like Halloween anymore. Anyway, I went to my first Halloween party last night, and I didn't go as any of the costumes I had made last week because I made a video last week talking about sustainable costumes and using the stuff that you have to become something, and I made like 8 costumes for that video, and I didn't use any of them because I became inspired at the last minute to be a moth. And I was inspired by a Rachel Maxey video, so all the credit goes to her for her vintage moth costume. I just thought it was so simple and effective, and I was like, anyone could make this. Like, it doesn't have to be some crazy contraption. Like, it just attaches to your body, and like you look like a moth when you put your arms up. It's like really effective, and you don't have to do a ton of work to get a big result. So that's what I decided to do. Before I decided to be a moth, I thought that I was going to be an orange mushroom from MapleStory. So I was trying to make one of those mushroom hats. You guys might have seen videos of them, but they're very flat, a lot of the videos. Like, it just looks like a mushroom cap like this. And I wanted to make one that was more, like, it had a big shape. It was very shaped, like, the shape of a mushroom. But that was really hard to achieve with what I had. I was using wire and cardboard. The wire was very flexible, and I was like, should I make paper mache? But you need a good base for paper mache, and it would be too heavy, and it was just getting complicated, and I couldn't achieve the vision, So, and at the same time, I had also been inspired by Rachel Maxey, and I was like, I have this orange felt already that I got for the mushroom hat, so why don't I just use it to be a moth? Because I was looking at different moth designs, and I was like, it would be cool to be a quintessential moth, but this yellowy orange, like yellow ochre, is my favorite color. And I found a moth called an Io moth that is this color. I thought it was so beautiful, so I just had to paint it. This costume is super easy to achieve and really effective, I think. And you could even tweak it to be Mothman if you wanted. So I'm just gonna include some clips of me making this costume because it was very fun and very simple. Alright, so here we go. Like I said, all the inspiration for this comes from Rachel Maxey, so all credit to her and her like vintage Halloween costumes that she found. But yeah, this is my version of a moth costume. And I guess this is going to be kind of like a tutorial. It's just going to be like an explainer of what I did to maybe inspire other people, because I was happy with the effect. And to be clear, even after making that big sustainable costumes video, I had a specific vision for what I wanted. I was trying to make a mushroom hat, and then I bought fabric specially to do that, and that's what I used for the moth costume, because I went off the mushroom hat. So, yeah, there's certain times when you just have a specific creative thing that you want to do, and then you end up having to buy something, so yeah, it just happens sometimes, I guess. So here I am marking out the felt, and the felt was nice because it was kind of warm and it kept its shape nicer than something thinner. I'm using like a charcoal China marker type of thing to map it out, and then I realized at the end, to make it symmetrical, I could just fold it like before cutting it so that the sides were exactly the same. And basically, I decided to pick an Io moth. I just thought it was really pretty, and it was this nice shade of yellow that I really enjoy. Oh yeah, you gotta try it on straight away, of course, and test that out. And then I pulled out my ancient acrylic paints. I have this cursed bag of, acrylic paints that I've collected over the years. My parents, actually, a really long time ago, before I existed, had a business making furniture look older, was pretty much the idea of it, and painting it custom and stuff, so I'm pretty sure some of these acrylic paints are from those days, and they've been living in the house for a long time. And yeah, lucky for me, there wasn't every color, like a lot of them were dried out, but the colors that were there happened to be the exact ones I needed to make this moth, painting. So I mapped it all out with my charcoal, and then I just went in and started painting. The felt was a bit difficult to paint. It was really absorbent, so like I had a lot of water there so that I could spread out the paint adequately. And then because I used so much water, it kind of took a long time to dry. But yeah, it was alright. And just make sure, if I was to give advice about this, I would say make sure you pre-mix enough of the colors that you want. Like, I was happy to use the colors straight from the tubes, but it would have been annoying if I mixed a specific color and then I ran out halfway through, and it would have been difficult to mix the same thing again. So the moth is kind of mostly yellow, so I didn't have to do a ton of painting for this. I was really excited about this in the moment, but honestly, looking back on it, I would have made the features bigger and maybe even changed the configuration of the wings a little bit, because like it doesn't match reference photos exactly, but I'm still kind of broadly happy with it. And just to say that this idea really came over me quickly, like it all happened in the course of an evening. Like, I watched the Rachel Maxey video and I was like, man, I really want to do this. And then I just started doing it, and I was up till like 12. And so I think I was in that mode of like, I'm just going to move forward. But yeah, looking back, I think I would have changed some things about the painting. I was leaving that to dry overnight. And for the second day, I started with making my headpiece. So I had this old plastic headband that I knew I was going to use, and I thought to give the antenna like the most structure, I would use 2 layers of Bristol board with a wire in the middle, hoping that the wire would give them some structure and keep them up and rigid. So I started hot gluing the wire in between the sandwich of Bristol board. I had to take a little moment for a try on to see how the wings were looking, and then I decided to make the straps for the wings. And this is the coolest part of the process, in my opinion. You just lift up your arms and the wings look like a butterfly. I just think it's really cool. And low effort for you, like the costume wearer. It's still comfortable for you, but then like big effect. So I'm a fan of that because I like to be comfortable. So I pretty much just held the wings up and eyeballed where my wrists were and marked that in like charcoal marker. Yeah, and then I attached felt strips to the wrists. I also eyeballed where I wanted it to lie on my neck, basically. And I added some nice little loop things there. Like, I made that by folding in half a piece of fabric so that they would be together. Because I thought I would attach some ribbon there to tie the wings to my back. So I just hot glued all of that on, and it held up really well during the night. I probably could have sewed these things, but I'm still a super duper amateur sewer. And then I had this moment, I put on the wings, and I was like, this doesn't really look how I wanted it to look. Like, if I just put the straps through my wrist, it was kind of droopy at the side. Like, I would have had to hold with my fingers the edge all night to really make it look like a butterfly shape. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna install some wire so that it is more structured and it will like stand up even when I'm not holding it. So I went to great efforts to install this wire and sandwiched it between pieces of felt with hot glue. And then I later realized that it would have been way more effective if I just attached like rubber bands or string to the end and hooked it into my finger. Like, that would have been a way easier fix, and the wire didn't actually do anything. Like, the wire was very unnecessary, so I wouldn't recommend that you do this if you ever try and make this costume. Instead, yeah, just attach something very simple to the end to loop through your finger. So I attached a rubber band that I could loop through when I wanted to give the proper effect. But during the night, I kept taking the straps off my arms and things, so it was more comfortable, and that was fine too. And I mean, of course, for every Halloween, like, your costume kind of comes off. Like, you start dropping your props, and like anything that's like slightly inconvenient kind of comes off. And that's what happened to me, because it was actually really hot when I wore this costume. Like, this costume was nice and thermal. Like, it would have worked better if I was in the UK maybe, but it was pretty hot. So as soon as I was dancing, I was like, these wings are coming off, like, can't take it, too many layers. But anyway, then I was going back to making the antenna, and to be honest with you, these took the longest time of anything. The wings took a really short time. I just think it's satisfying to see this charcoal happening though, because I originally painted the antenna, and then that definitely wasn't enough of the yellow color that I was going for, so I used basically an entire pastel to make them really yellow, and I sprayed them with Artist's Fixative, and then I started to cut out the little bits, like the little moth sensory bits, you know what I'm talking about, and that took the longest time, and I was trying to make them kind of curved as well, so to follow the shape. And then what took even longer was the 2 layers of Bristol board that I had used were coming apart. Like, they weren't kind of lying flat together, probably because I used the paint. And so I had to go in and like hot glue each one. I didn't really have to use hot glue, but it was just fast. So I hot glued them all to get them to stay together. And here's me trying them on. I probably could have designed these structurally a little bit better, because they kept falling forward, like they were just too heavy for the headband. So that was kind of a little bit of a problem. And then the wire, you know, I thought the wire was foolproof. I thought the wire would solve all my issues, but I guess it was just too flimsy. And during the night, they kind of just got like more and more pushed down towards my head, towards the sides. So they were just like flattening out. But anyway, that's just what happens in life, I think, sometimes when you try and make a Halloween costume. But it looked cool for a little bit. And I mean, they still looked effective, even though they were a bit droopy. But the way that I fixed the headband falling forward is I just put a cloth, like stretchy headband, over the top of the plastic one, and that kind of held it in place. And I kept pushing the antenna like back, so I would bend the wires back, and then that would help for a little bit. Yeah, so after I made the headband, the costume was pretty much done. So here we go, the big reveal. This is me being an Io moth. And when I was filming this reveal, I was like, oh no, if it's like any amount of wind at the party, my antennae are just gonna blow over. So adding the cloth headband helped a lot with that, but it was still a bit of a worry. And the wings felt fantastic. Like, I was a little bit worried that the hot glue and felt thing that I did wouldn't hold the weight of them, but it did hold the weight really well. And like I said, the key to keeping them the right shape was not the wire, but it was just installing a little rubber band that I looped through my finger for maximum effectiveness. However, I will say, before the party where I actually wore these, I ended up painting the inside, because obviously moth's color on their wings is on the back side, so it would make sense that on the front, like where my face is and stuff, you wouldn't see the pretty designs, but also, like, who cares about that? Like, it would look way cooler if I had the designs on both sides. So that's what I did in the end. I was painting that afternoon, painting the other side, and I put it outside to dry so that it would dry in time. It was still slightly wet when I was going to the party, but not wet enough to come off on my clothes. I think it was just like the water that had seeped into the felt. So that was all good in the end. The other thing I'll say is that I did struggle to know what to wear underneath, but looking at the photos of the moths, I just decided to go with the same color scheme as the wings, because that's kind of what the moth body is, kind of yellow ochre too. And for the final look that I wore to the party, I wore these fuzzy, kind of almost like Ugg boots. They had like fuzz inside them and they were brown, because I was like, moths are fuzzy. And I also wore mittens, yellow mittens that were fuzzy, made of wool. So I was like, yeah, trying to emulate some of how the moth looked in that way. Thanks for watching my moth video. Yeah, hopefully you thought it was cool. Did you think it was haunting? I like the idea of a moth because they come out at night and it's getting darker earlier here. So the Halloween party I went to yesterday was completely dark, so I felt justified in going out. And I think people enjoyed it. I think it's more obvious because of my huge antenna. I didn't know how big the antenna were gonna turn out to be, and they kept flopping over, but you know, that's just how it goes. It's just entropy. And yeah, I felt very dramatic and cool. There were a couple of other bugs, or like, you know, microfauna invertebrate type of things there. Someone dressed up as a cockroach, which is my true greatest fear in Bermuda. Also someone dressed up as a copepod, and that was really cool. But my favorite costume of the night was our friend who dressed up as Boo from Monsters, Inc. But when Boo is dressed up as like disguised as a monster child, I enjoyed that a lot.